Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be taking a sports channel eye view, and I'm going to talk about one of my secret passions of NASCAR, and we're going to talk about a series that I actually liked a lot. If you want to go over to Danny B Talk's channel and check out his Rise and Fall series, he does this with Cup Series teams that are no longer available. But what he hasn't done, and I think he should do, is look at some of the teams that aren't really known that much for their success and more for their consistency at doing what they do best. And today we're looking at a team that wasn't really consistently good, but always was a mid-pack / playoff contender during their rebirth. We're doing TriStar Racing Empire to Bust. So before I begin, I'm going to say, first of all, TriStar Racing actually started in 1990 through 1998, racing a nationwide campaign, but we're going to talk about their rebirth because in those days they're basically making 5 to 10 starts every year. Sometimes Cup Series starts, they make 1 to 3 starts. They put together a full season in 1998 and 1995, but mostly they were just trying to make a paycheck. It's basically the early version of start and park teams, but they were trying to actually finish the race just in a very low position so they could collect a paycheck and just make money. So let's begin. So in 2010, the Row Motorsports had sold its three charter teams. Now the charter system didn't exist, but what did exist was a part-time basis system where if your car was inside the top 25 in the Xfinity and the now nationwide series points, you would automatically contend to be in the race. However, this in the Cup Series was 35, but in the Xfinity and the now nationwide series, I'm just going to call it Xfinity series because I'm going to be honest, I've basically only researched this team and not when the Busch nationwide and Xfinity series were a thing. So I apologize for my lack of knowledge, but I've only started watching NASCAR recently, but I've actually found that I like mid-pack and backmarker teams because I think that they're just trying to make a living underneath the giants of the sport, such as Joe Gibbs, Hendrick, and somewhat Stewart-Haas and RCR. So anyway, Row Motorsports, a mid-pack backmarker team in the Cup Series now, used to have 3 Xfinity Series teams, 2 full-times that were playoff contenders, and a part-time 36 car. They sold these to the new TriStar Racing gang group that had came off their 1998 season and started a rebirth in 2010. They made some Truck Series starts, but I couldn't really find any information on Racing Reference to see if they actually made a full-time season in the Truck Series, so I feel like they just had a bunch of part-time entries. So their first drivers that tried to run full-time were Tony Raines and Jason Keller in the 34 and 35. Tony Raines finished in honorable 17th place in the points, running 34 of the 35 races. He had 2 top 10s and an average finish of 22.2 and an average gain of 10.7. Jason Keller would do a little bit better in his stat lines with 1 top 5, 1 top 10, an average finish of 23.4, and an average gain of 4.6, but he only placed 22nd in the points. The reason I put average gain on here is I just want to show that these drivers were punching above their weight class. They took the ride that gave them a lower qualifying spot, and they were able to improve throughout the race. And as you'll see, the 36 car of Jeff Green, I'm going to rag on Jeff Green a lot because in my mind Jeff Green is a pretty terrible driver. I don't know how he got a nationwide series championship, and I don't know how much he's done in the Truck Series, but I just know in the Xfinity Series he's kind of awful. I mean, people throw around Mike Harmon's name as being pretty bad, but this guy, a negative 10.8 and an average finish of 42.5. Note there were only 43 cars in each race, so his average finish means he was finishing either 42nd or 43rd in his 11 starts, which is terrible. Anyway, the only notable thing about the 2010 season, apart from the 17th place finish, is that they tried to make a Cup Series start, but they didn't qualify for Watkins Glen with Tony Ave, road course racer. They just couldn't muster the finishing results, and they're running a front row car, third entry anyway, so it wasn't really going to happen. But let's move on to 2011, because they got a lot better in this season. In 2011, they had two full-time contenders and one part-time, but it was mostly a full-time entry with Jeff Green. As of the story of the day, you will see that there are 2 bright spots and 1 not-so-bright spot. So let's go over the 14 of Eric McClure. Not as good as his teammate Mike Bliss, but still he got an average finish of 27.2, an average gain of 3.9, which is very impressive, and a points finish of 19th. Not bad. The 19 of Mike Bliss, however, got 1 top 10, an average finish of 19.7. His average gain was a little bit lower, but he still placed an honorable 12th in the points. And even though the playoffs weren't a thing during that time, still, 12th place basically would get him a playoff position, which is pretty amazing. But then we have the 44 of Jeff Green, and gotta say, average finish of 39.9. He did improve in all of his stat lines, but I mean, it's still an average gain of negative 8.4 and still 38th in points. I mean, if you look back here, I mean, his points finish, he didn't even have a points finish that was notable. It was outside the top 80, and average gain of 10.8. I mean, he improved, but not by much. In 2012, they got into the Cup Series a little bit, which is what we're going to talk about for the bulk for a little bit before we talk about the bulk of the Xfinity Series. So the 19 of Mike Bliss planned to start 25 races, but he could only start in 18. He DNF'd 7 of them. His average finish was 40.3, which was pretty good for a first full-time season, but his teammate Reed Sorensen planned 13 starts, started 10 of them, did noticeably better as he finished 4 races. Mike Bliss only finished 1 race, and his average finish was 31st. So that was a pretty good campaign, especially running the second entry. What we're going to talk about, though, is the Xfinity Series. I'm going to go from worst to first, and I'm going to start with the 44 of Mike Bliss. He was able to increase his score and finish 8th in points, which is amazing. He got an average gain of -1, which was pretty bad, but an average finish of 16.8 and 1 top 10 is pretty good for Mike Bliss. He improved in everything except for average game, but, you know, he must have gotten better at qualifying more. The 19 of Taylor Malsam, I don't know how to say it that much, but he didn't compete full-time, but he basically made up the bulk of the season. He got 1 top 10, an average finish of 20.6. He had an average gain of 4.3, which is pretty great, and a points finish of 15th. Not bad. Eric McClure finishing 1 points position lower, and an average gain of 6.9, which is amazing. An average finish of 24th, which is a little bit lower than his average last year, but still that 16th place is pretty amazing. And then we have 10 of Jeff Green. He didn't make a full season, but 36th average finish, average gain of 9.8. He took a step backward there, but he got a 26 points finish, which in 22 starts is pretty impressive, I guess, but not that much. In 2013, they did not go into the Cup Series, but they did make a switch to Toyota. You'll see that I marked the green for Chevrolet years and then the red for the Toyota years. In this year, they actually had 5 entries, and we'll talk about them in a second. But first, they had 2 almost full-time entries. Eric McClure Started 27 races, had one top 10, an average finish of 26.2, an average gain of 3.8, finished 20th. He got a top 10, but everything else was a kind of a step back. But honestly, it was a pretty good season since it is a manufacturer change and you would expect them to finish a little bit lower. Mike Bliss was able to complete a full-time season. He had one start in the 10 car, but he was still driving the team full-time. He had two top 10s, an average finish of 19.4, had an average gain of 1.1, finished 13th. With the manufacturer change, I'm honestly quite glad because he did increase his top 10s in the car, and honestly, I think the ride, when he rode in the 10 car was kind of a start and park entry, as we'll get to, because it didn't really finish a lot of the races that it competed in, so I feel like that one ride in the number 10 car kind of dragged that average finish down a little bit, but honestly, the 13th after a manufacturer change is pretty good. The other three rides, the 44, the 10, and the 91, all combined for about 66 starts, and all the average finishes were basically the combined starts were 4 top 10s, and all 4 of those 10s were done by Colwitt driving the number 44, so really the 44 had a pretty good driver marking, so I think the 44 is pretty good at gaining positions over time. It's just not good in qualifying, but the other 2 were basically start and park entries. The 91 was basically Jeff Green, so don't even want to look at that. In 2013, they did make a few cup starts. With Mike Bliss planning to start 20, he only finished 1 out of the 11 races he qualified for, and that finish he got a 33rd. So not that good. In 2014, the same 5 entries came out. Eric McClure and Jeff Green would split the number 14. The average finish would be 25.4, but Eric McClure basically increased his average finish by 0.2 points, while Jeff Green basically dragged down that average because he is a bad driver. Average gain of +3, even with Jeff Green's shenanigans, and a points finish of 19th. Not bad for that 14th entry. Mike Bliss would run a full-time campaign. He would do worse this year, which was a little bit concerning considering Mike Bliss kind of was the team's best driver during this time. The 44 driver carousel got 1 top 10 with David Starr and had a pretty good average gain, still mediocre stats, and the other 2 cars were basically the same as last year. In 2015, also in 2014, they sold their Cup Series to Row Motorsports to run the number 77 in 2014. So they didn't actually make any Cup starts after this because they sold the number 19 to Joe Gibbs Racing so they could have Carl Edwards in the 4th entry. In 2015, they started 4 full-time entries. The 8 of Blake Cook, 0 top 5s and top 10s, but an average finish of 24.5 and points finish of 17th. Pretty good season so far. Jeff Green, not even going to get into those stats because they are abhorrent. They are abhorrent. That is a failure. He is a failure of a driver. And that's why I'm just going to rant some more on how bad he is. I mean, those stats are awful. Cale Conley and Mike Bliss split this ride. I split up their average gains. 0.5 for Conley and 11.3 for Bliss. Bliss basically became the climb at this point. But they've both averaged a 20th place finish and an average finish of 26.3. So that's pretty good so far. David Starr in the 44 had another top 10, an average finish of 22.5, an upgrade. His average gain increased, and his point finish was pretty good at a 16th place finish for the 3rd entry. Honestly, Blake Cook and David Starr basically became the Mike Bliss of this team, while the 14 of Cale Conley was completely botched. Bliss completely went from 2013 having a really good year to 2014 faltering off the face of existence. And now this time he was basically Jeff Green 2.0. In 2016 they only had 2 full-time drivers, and you can see the stat lines. Jeff Green got an average finish of 35.3, placed 28th with an average gain of 7.42. Basically just repeating what he's always been known for. basically taking a mid-pack car and making it a starting park. JJ Yaley, Joe Gibb Racing's Folly, actually got 3 top 10s, an average finish of 19th, and a points finish of 14th. That's a pretty good year, but JJ Yaley, underrated. People blame him for his Joe Gibbs racing experience, but in the Xfinity Series, he's basically the Kyle Busch of the Cup Series, as he's able to get into any car and drive well. Of course, I probably made the wrong comparison there, since Kyle Busch hasn't driven anything below race winning, so he really can't complain about lower drivers not getting the equipment that he's been given. Garrett Smith. In 2017, they started a full-time Cup Series, taking the third liquidation of Front Row's 35 team char with the 72 of Cole Witt. Cole Witt got a 33rd place points finish with an average finish of 28.3. That average gain is what I want you to look at, because that just means that he was a really good driver, and they kind of short-stacked him next year, because in my mind, Corey LaJoie was kind of a failed BK Racing prospect. So, I mean, BK Racing, I'm going to probably have to do a thing on them, but, I mean, they probably failed every single driver that came through their pipeline. I mean, the only driver they pretty much molded into a mid-pack contender has been, they mid-packed Alex Bowman, but Alex Bowman became a Tommy Baldwin prospect, so I guess he was given a free pass by Junior to race the 88, and that's how he became famous. And then you have Ryan Truex, who became a Truck Series contender. Matt DiBenedetto obviously was a BK Racing prospect. I guess they have 3 that they did pretty well, but I'm getting off topic. We'll have to do them later. Xfinity Series, basically JJ Yaley, 20th average finish, average gain of 4.5, a top 10 again, and a points finish at 14th. He basically finished 14th in 2016, so no gain really, but still solid effort. 44, Benny Gordon. This guy, I have no idea why they made him do this car. He had 27th place average finish and finished 70 in the points. I mean, what else do I have to say? That's a complete dumpster fire right there. In 2017, after that abhorrent season with Benny Gordon, they just scrapped their Xfinity program. And in 2018, they ran 2 drivers. Cole Witt, you can see the comparison stats. He had an average finish of 26.8 and finished 35th in the points, but only ran 13 races with an average gain of 6.7, while Corey LaJoie ran almost twice as many races, except he had an average finish of 31.5 and placed only 1 position higher, and his average gain was just borderline. I mean, shoot, dude. I mean, I know you had a bunch of engine failures, but that's no excuse to be this way. No excuse. And that's it. After 2018, a sad sad event. Mark Smith, the team leader, he passed away in 2013 and gave it over to his son, Brad Smith. And then in 2017, my apologies. But after 2017, you can see it. I mean, 2017, dumpster fire with Benny Gord. 2018, it was basically just a split-time Cup Series team between 2 drivers. And at the end of 2018, they just liquidated their charter. They sold it. And they basically just dipped out of the sport. We never heard from them again. I think I heard they made a Truck Series start, but it was a one-off deal, and I think it was also, I'd probably have to look it up, but I'm pretty sure they've made one more start, and then after that they were done. They were going to run in 2019 in the Cup Series in the Daytona 500, but they never made it to the track, so it was kind of a bust of a season. So what do I have to say about this team? In the beginning, they had a pretty good start. In the mid-pack, they were not in the mid. In the mid-season, they were a mid-pack empire, running 3 consistent cars. And then in the later years, they got even better, and then they got worse. They started a Cup Series program that did well for a while, but after Mark Smith's death in 2017, they basically fell off a bridge. Brad Smith couldn't run the team. He couldn't do what his father did, and really just fell apart. So that's my review on TriStar Racing, and hope you guys liked this video. It's a little bit weird, but I have another video planned on this. Let me know if you have any teams I should do next. I'm already thinking about doing TMG. I'm working on TMG/Key Motorsports. So let me know if you want me to do any other teams that you know that if deceased, they have to be deceased. I could do current day Cup Series teams, but I have a feeling that current day teams have already made it, and they're probably going to come after me for using their licensing, so I'm kind of going after dead teams right now. So just give me one, like Braun Racing, Red Horse Racing in the Truck Series. I could do Mike Harmon. Oh wait, they're still alive. I don't know how. I could do Peruco, Circle Sport, a lot of those. I can do anything that's not I could do BK Racing, Team Red Bull, anything. But for right now, like if you like, dislike if you don't, subscribe if you really liked it, and I'll catch you in the next video.